Hello, and it's great to be online talking with or to people who are interested in the course. So my name is Dr. Peter Ride, and I run the course Museums, Galleries and Contemporary Culture. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through a little presentation and tell you what the course actually does, how it's structured, and then, as Arjun said, you've got an interface so you can type questions in. So if there are things coming up as I'm going along that you want to know more about, then you can type them at any time, and we'll have a period at the end when we gather the questions together and answer them. So to start off with, the key essential thing is why study museums and galleries, and what's the value of postgraduate study? Because obviously we recognise that people who want to become students are making a substantial contribution and sacrifice to do that. So we want to make sure it's actually worth your while. Well, there are many reasons to do that, actually, and with the job sector that we're in right now, it's actually incredibly hard for people to get a job in the cultural sector unless they have a postgraduate qualification. Having an undergraduate degree is not enough anymore because employers look for specialism. They look for specialism and they look for people who've got some knowledge and expertise of the field, and that's the kind of thing that you can get from doing a course like our course. So coming up on your screen should probably be a picture of me. So this is what I do, who I am, what I do, and that's my office at the university. So the course has been designed, in particular it's been designed with partnership organisations, with Tate and with the Museum of London. So we've worked with them to understand what kind of people they're interested in having as graduates coming into their workforce. And it particularly looks at the way that the 21st century is different from the 20th century in the way that museums and galleries operate. What are the things that are absolutely specific in a time of change that institutions need? And we do this by working with our partners and going to a range of other organisations as well to talk to experts. So it's been designed for people who want to work in jobs of all sorts of different things across the sector, and primarily, and I'll stress this again and again, we go to the experts, the people who are employed by the museums and the galleries, and we get them to tell the students what it is they're doing and how they're doing it. Obviously, there's a considerable amount of book-based learning that we do. Students always do an amount of reading to deal with the issues and the way they're discussed, but first-hand contact with curators is really important. So, and there are many courses in the country, so why go to us? Why come to the University of Westminster? And we're bang in the centre of London, and that's a really good reason. We're bang in the centre of London, we're at the heart of London, we're at the heart of a major global cultural capital, and we've got access to some of the most important museums and galleries in the world. And so students are able to go to those, they're able to meet the curators, talk with the curators. We also take students on visits to places to see things as well, see world-class exhibitions, leading institutions. Now, let me just go through some of the way the modules on the course. Different educational institutions use different languages, so as in use different terms to describe what they do. When we say course, we mean what a North American mean by program. It's the master's course. When we say module, a module is a subject, and the course is made up of a number of subjects, and you choose pretty much the ones that you want to do. So we have a range of available subjects to you. For example, one of them is called Art Museums and Contemporary Culture. We teach this one with Tate Modern and Tate Britain, the two sister organisations of Tate in London. And on this, students ask, well, what is it that makes up a contemporary art museum? What are the issues that face a modern museum? And we work through the departments of the museum. So we talk to curators, we talk to people involved in fundraising, people who are involved in the business side, people involved in the marketing, the audience research. So students get a really good overall understanding of what it means to work in one of these places. Here's a photograph of one of the lead curators at Tate Britain talking to the students about the way in which they've just organised this gallery space, and they're having a really good conversation with him about the decisions he's made about using the art to tell a particular kind of story. And this is a particular kind of painting which is always fascinating to international audiences, Ophelia by Millet, and the curator was telling the students how they present this in different ways and how they get information across it to different people. Some of the modules that we teach at the Museum of London, which is one of London's premier wonderful, wonderful museums, is called Museum Narratives. And this is saying, well, what are the stories that a museum tells? How do museums decide what kind of stories they're going to tell to its public? How do they then plan an exhibition? What does a curator do? How do they choose objects? What text are they going to use? How do they work with designers? How do they promote their exhibitions? So students working with the people working at the Museum of London get a really good understanding of how the museum functions and the way in which it presents its material to its public. Here are some of our students looking at one of the exhibitions of Roman Britain when the Romans had settled London, and doing a critique of the design and saying essentially how they would do it differently if they were doing it. This is a picture of a display at the Museum of London, and our students contributed to this display. They worked with the curators when the London 2012 Olympics were on, and they gathered information through Twitter and social networking about the way in which people were responding to the Olympics, and that became part of the display. So the students not only are going and learning, but they're actually taking an active part sometimes and contributing to the institutions. Another module which we do at the Museum of London is called Collecting Today. So we're looking at their collections, and here we are literally looking at their collections. This is a collection of 16th and 17th century purses that the curator of fashion is showing the students in one of their storage drawers. And we talk about what sort of objects the museum keeps, how they keep records on them, what they do with them, how they share them with other organisations, all the sorts of things that a curator working in a big institution like this needs to know. Here are our students working in the storerooms, handling, in this case, a 17th century jug that had come across from Germany, and they're trying to identify it and work out what it is. Here are our students looking at something which is actually an ancient Roman artifact. It's a little money box from a Roman period. And again, they're getting this precious object and getting to identify it. Here are the students working in with the conservation studios with one of the paper conservators, talking about what happens when you get a very old piece of paper and how you have to look after it and what conditions you need to keep it in. One of the other things that students are often really interested in is working as contemporary art curators. So one of the modules that we have is on curating contemporary art, how you organise an exhibition, how you plan it. The photographs here are of an exhibition that some of our students planned and they put on in one of the university galleries, creating an open call for students and across London to actually contribute to it. And they had videos, they had photographs, they had artworks in it. And this module gives students a really good understanding of the practicalities of being a curator, how you fundraise, how you organise a show, how you move works of art around the place, how you work things with your press, all the sorts of essential bits of knowledge that a curator needs. One of the other modules, we often have a lot of students who are very interested in photography. So we look at the way in which museums or galleries exhibit photography, the choices they make, the kind of things they do. And yet another one is looking at working online, because being a digital organisation is absolutely crucial now in the 21st century. What are the strategies that different organisations do? The Rijksmuseum, for example, in Amsterdam, is giving their work away copyright free. People can download anything they want and do anything with it. So we talk about why an organisation would do that. We meet curators who talk about their strategies. We look at things like social networking and how that would operate. This is from the Museum of London, who developed a really fantastic app where you can go around the streets of London and you point your phone at different locations and it brings up historical photographs. So we talk about, the way they developed that, how they worked with a particular technical company to develop this, geopositioning software. And I think this is the last of my slides on one of our modules. Many of our people coming in are interested in working in the education and learning departments of museums and galleries. So we work really closely with fantastic organisations, including Tate, the Royal Academy, various museums, looking at the way in which they develop programs. This is for kids, but it could be for families. It could be senior adults. It could be, had you organise an event, kind of a rap event this is Tate Britain, when you take over the place for a night and you completely change it by having music in there. So we work through all these sorts of things. One of the things which is really important about our course is we give students the opportunity to do work placements and internships, and this can be part of the course. They can get academic points for doing this. We don't organise them for the students because we feel it's a really important process that people do applications themselves, do research, find a kind of place they'd be interested in, but we help make it happen. So we will do introductions, we'll help students through the interview process. And our students have had placements and internships in a wide range of organisations, from big museums and galleries through to really small places where they just get to do a huge range of things, through from festivals to consultancies, a whole pile of stuff like that. Because this is an academic master's, it involves writing a dissertation or doing a major research project, which you do at the end of your period of study, which is something you're able to spend hopefully a considerable amount of time to do something really good that interests you. And this is a picture of the British Library, where many students go and do typical research work, but they might also do something which is more practical. They might go around interviewing curators about the work that they do. They might run a project like put on an exhibition. They might do a collecting project with a museum. Anything can be a research major project. And we work with students to tailor what they want to do, so we make sure that it gives them really, really good outcomes. And the thing about something like this, which is really important, is if you go for a job interview, and you're sitting across the table from a group of museum professionals, if you can say to them, this is something practical that I did, here is a portfolio of activities that I developed, here's an exhibition brochure for an exhibition that we put on, you will get their attention, and you will be able to talk with them about having developed something which is really specific, that they understand. You don't just want to be able to sit in front of someone at a job interview and say, I've written a lot of essays which demonstrate your intelligence and your theoretical knowledge. You want to be able to say that you understand how an organisation works, and you've got what they call transferable skills. You've got particular knowledge which can be applied in the organisation. So, having said that, the kind of things our graduates do, the course has been running now, it's in its 5th year. They go into a wide range of things, and in the UK and other countries, and they could be curators within a museum or a gallery. They could be organising fine art exhibitions. They could be working visitor services. They could be working on the management side. A whole range of things. Many of them go and work within education and events. And quite a few students go on to further study. Actually, they go on to do PhDs, so they develop more subject-specific knowledge, which they're then able to do apply in the museum or the gallery. Some have started up their own businesses, art businesses. We currently have a student from Indonesia who's planning to develop a museum. She's part of a consortium in Indonesia, and they're going to develop a new museum there. So just some statements. I think you've got access to this online, this PowerPoint. So I've got some information here from some of our previous graduates. So I'm not going to talk in great length about these because you can read this if you want to. But so, for example, Celia, who's from Cyprus, did the MA a couple of years ago. She then went and worked in an arts organisation, working in a gallery space as a curator. She's now gone off to be a freelance. She's developing projects. Amanda graduated last year. She's an American. Her background was in literature. She's gone back to America. She's now got a job in a museum in Boston, which is fantastic, working within the education department there. Just to give you an idea of current students, Laura is a current student. She's from Italy. Her background is in architecture. and she's really interested in seeing how she can work in the museum and gallery sector. So this gives you an indication of the kind of things that the backgrounds our students have, the kind of things they go on to do. And our students come from around the world. So here we are at the National Maritime Museum. They've got a huge map of the world, and you can see our students standing on different parts of it. The students actually from East Asia and China and Japan weren't here that day, so that little bit of the world is a bit missing, but otherwise you see a lot of students from Western Europe, from students from Syria, students from Indonesia, students from Central, South, North America. We have a wide distribution, and as I say, we always have students from East Asia as well. And their backgrounds, this is some of the students from 2 years ago in the back of the photograph, but wide-ranging backgrounds from architecture, anthropology, journalism, events management. A lot of people who do this course have worked at some point in a museum or a gallery, usually as a volunteer, and they want to develop their knowledge. They've had a taste that they want a specific skill that they can take on further. So, key information. How do we run it? Well, you can start at 2 points of the year. One point is to start in January, and then you're doing it from January to January. And the other way to do it is to start in September, so that you start with the semester that runs from September to December, have a little break over Christmas, then you have classes resume again in January going through to April. Students usually work on their dissertation major project over the summer month, and if they're doing a work placement, often they do it then. And most of our students are doing, whether they're doing the work placement module or not, they're doing some kind of work in a museum or a gallery, doing either paid work or doing voluntary work in a museum or a gallery while they're with us, because they really want to build up their CV and their contacts. Well, I think I've said enough, and so do we have any questions coming in, Arjun?
So we've had a few questions in, so I think let's get started with them. The first question is, do you need a background in art and design in order to join onto the course? Yeah,
that's a question I always get asked, and no, you absolutely don't. One of the things, and I brought up showed that slide with the group of girls who were on the course a couple of years ago. None of them actually, only one of them had a background in art and design. A fine art background, and she's now working she's Russian and she's working in the Hermitage Museum. She was particularly interested in classical art. No, some of our students absolutely don't have an interest in fine art at all. Some people particularly have an interest in history. Occasionally we get people who've got an interest in sciences only. We have a student at the moment whose background is product design. No, the thing about the museum profession is that people come in from all sorts of different directions, and it's not like there's an obvious undergraduate path. With something like English literature, you can expect that people have done English literature in high school, and then they went on and did English literature for a bachelor's degree at university, and then they're going to go and do English literature for a master's course. But it doesn't work that way with museums. And the other thing is, one of the things which makes this course a really nice course to teach is that people develop a knowledge in another area and then go, I want to change it. I've discovered I really love museums, or I really love the cultural sector. I want to work in that area. So in a sense, they cross over from one area to another. So the answer is no, you don't need a background in art and design. You need to have an enthusiasm for museums or galleries. If you're not enthusiastic about them, if you don't enjoy being in them and really think you'd like to work in them, then it's not the course for you, because you're immersed in it so much. But just an interest, just a general interest, is absolutely fine. So another question, which is essentially about that same thing, from someone whose background and interest is primarily in history. Absolutely. And that's why the course is organised in ways so that if someone's got a particular interest in a particular area, they can concentrate on that. So another question we have here is from someone saying she's been interested in doing an MA for a while, but unfortunately to various issues, she's concerned about the chances of being accepted onto a course such as this and wants to know what we ask for in potential students. So this is from Victoria. So thanks, Victoria, for sending this in. When we ask people to make the application, I look at three things. I look at someone's academic record, and to see that they've shown that within a previous degree they're capable of academic study. I look at their previous experience and if they've done work or done voluntary work. And it may not actually be that they've worked in the cultural sector, but they've done work which involves them in a way which is relevant. I mean, so for example, people who've worked in retail and really start to understand what the shopping experience is like, it really crosses over quite closely with the way in which museums look at the way that the visitor experience operates. So, so people don't have to have worked in a museum or a gallery. But I look one at educational background, two at someone's previous experience and the way in which they present themselves, and thirdly, their personal statement and why they say they want to do the course, because that's the essential thing. And when we have curators coming in to talk to the students, I usually ask them to say what was the career path they took, and it's very interesting the number of them who say, well, I wasn't actually that great a student at university, but then I really loved museums or I really loved galleries, so I decided to change what I was doing, and I made this the focus of my life, and they've gone on to be fantastic at the job that they do. And those things I think are really important. So someone's commitment and passion is really important in the application process. Then when the application comes in, I then ask students to write me an essay. And I send students a short article, which was published in a journal a couple of years ago by a leading American academic who says, what is a museum? And he talks through ideas about what a museum is. And I ask the applicants to write me a very short essay, just saying what they think the points are this person has made, and from their experience, what they think makes a museum a museum. And I do this because this is really important for people to understand how we work educationally on a course like ours, because we spend a lot of time reading and discussing in groups the ideas which we're hearing, and people's opinions are crucial. It's absolutely essential that people are able to develop an opinion and share it with other people. Because the course is very much about collective activity like that. And so the three things that are on the application form, the background knowledge, the experience, and the personal statement are really important. And then the fourth thing is the way in which students demonstrate they're able to think critically and creatively and involve their own experience. Those are the four things that we're looking at. So if someone has a 2-2 from the previous degree, that is absolutely not a problem. And if I went round and I tapped lots of leading curators and museum people on the shoulder and said, what did you get at university for your first degree? I would find a lot of people would say they got a 2-2 or they got a second rather than the first. We have a question about options which are available. And I'd said before that students get to choose the modules they do. There's one, it's compulsory to do the dissertation, and it's compulsory to do one broad overarching module which is called the current issues in museums and galleries, which we talk through what are the big challenges facing museums, things like ethical issues, things like funding issues, things like a real interest in audiences having a particular say, people participating more in museums. Those are the big shifts in the 21st century, being part of a culture which is about participation and engagement. So that's the compulsory module. Everything else you choose what you want to do. And there are about 8 or 9 modules that you can choose from. Some of them are more about fine art and some of them are more about museums. So you can weave the path that you want. And if someone wants to do something as well which is from a related master's, Culture and Critical Studies or Art and Visual Culture, which are much more theoretical than our MA, they can do that as well. They can take one we call it an elective module. They can take an elective module from somewhere else. And we have another question about dissertations. How much time do dissertations take, and do we give students support? A dissertation, as I said before, dissertation is normally done over the summer, so we expect students to spend a couple of months working on it. When you decide what topic it is that you want to work on, and if it's going to be a project like doing an exhibition or an exhibition proposal or working with an organisation, one of our students this year who's Syrian is going to organise a special Syrian cultural event for refugee artists from Syria. And we're going to be hosting that in the university, so that's going to be her special project. I then allocate one of the academic staff or an outside museum or gallery professional to be the supervisor to that person, and they would then have a number of one-to-one sessions over a couple of months period, and they would then write up their dissertation or their project in a form that's appropriate. Sometimes people submit it as a video. Some people have submitted websites. Most people submit a written document, but it can be a whole range of things. And I think we pretty much covered the subject. As I said before, if anyone wants to send me an email, I'm really happy to receive that and have a one-to-one conversation.